Market Journal, television for agricultural business decisions, is a presentation of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources. Promotional support is provided by the Nebraska Farmer magazine.
Hello everyone, I'm Bryce Duskett, and thanks for joining us today on Market Journal. Well, it's been a full week of celebration of the agriculture industry. Each year, National Ag Day, which took place this past Tuesday, reminds the public of the important contributions of the industry. This year, U.S. President Joe Biden joined in on the celebration as he encouraged all Americans to reaffirm our commitment to and appreciation of American agriculture. Back in Nebraska, Governor Pete Ricketts proclaimed the entire week as Agriculture Week here in the Cornhusker State. We'll share more details on National Agriculture Week coming up in the program, but first, we're taking a lesson from musical legend Guy Lombardo and the Royal Canadians, who delivered the 1949 song "Enjoy Yourself, It's Later Than You Think." When it comes to retirement, it's never too early to get the ball rolling to ensure you're preparing for the tail end of your career. With that in mind, we caught up with UNL Adjunct Professor of Financial Planning Doug Nelson at this year's Women in Ag event to hear his strategies on retiring without selling the farm. Market Journal's Bill Dodd brings us this story.
One thing my father always told me was to make good financial decisions early in life, because you can't buy back your 20s. The older I get, the more I realize just how right he was. If you happen to be moving into the proverbial fourth quarter of your career, the option of investing in a retirement account could prove to have some beneficial tax incentives.
I think one of the things we think about retirement plans as putting some money away as an investment for retirement. I think one of the things that gets overlooked is the tax savings advantages of using retirement plans. Obviously, farmers and ranchers like to depreciate, but their accountants will say, okay, this combine or this implement you can depreciate over time, but that's not something you can just liquidate and go to Jamaica for the winter. So you don't have to shovel snow. So it's important, and by putting money into a retirement plan, you can actually lower your taxable income for you, and if your spouse is involved, for your spouse. Another option is many farmers and ranchers themselves or their spouse work for a company or an institution like a school or a county that may have a retirement plan. And if they look forward and project their taxes, they can lower their adjusted gross income by that person putting more money into their own retirement plan. That way you don't have to set anything up. It's already set up. Just use the 403B as a teacher. Use the 457 as a county employee. And that will lower your income for what you have to put to Uncle Sam.
While some people may find themselves in a land-rich, cash-poor scenario when it comes time to retire, holding on to your land could be more beneficial than selling outright. Holding on to that property could help you avoid paying some hefty taxes on any land sales.
And so far it's going up in value. There's a lot of appreciated value in there. The problem gets to be, how do you use that without incurring taxes? Because if you sell that land, most of it's going to have a cost basis. And that you got to pay taxes on that. For an example, my father bought land in northern Kansas with his money that he saved during World War II as a B-17 tail gunner. And he bought that land in 1946, and he still has that land. Some of it he paid, hardly anything for it. And if his nephews farmed the land and would like to buy the land eventually. But if he sold it to them now, the capital gains on that land is prohibitive. He's 98 years old. He just said, I'll just go ahead, and when I pass away, they'll get a stepped up tax basis. We sell that land, the estate can sell it, and we avoid the taxes at that point.
When it comes to money, most people want to have access, safety, and growth. However, Doug points out when it comes to your retirement plan, at most, you can have 2 of those 3 options without losing too much ground.
So your money is like a restaurant with a sign. And I stole this from a guy named Bob Goodman years ago. And the restaurant sign says, great food, great service, great price. You can have 2 out of 3. Because how often do you get all 3? So with your money, you want safety, you want access, and obviously you want growth. You can't get all 3. If you want growth, you got to give up access. You got to say, all right, I'm going to keep it there and get through the COVID crisis, get through the Ukraine crisis, and it will recover over time. There's been 13 bear markets since World War II. 13 of them since World War II. The average one is 35% drop, okay? So in spite of that, the market has done a 10% return, more or less, since that time, since World War II. The average investor has got about a 4% return because they panic when the market goes down, when there's a crisis. They jump out, and they miss it when it comes back up. So and they get giddy when it's up. When it's up, they buy more. Oh, but they're buying high and selling low. Just stay in it, dollar cost average, it'll work out.
When it comes to the topic of retirement, it makes sense to start saving while you're young. However, if you've come to the point where retirement is right around the corner, finding ways to reduce taxes on your income and retirement will be critical when it comes time to enjoy yourself. Reporting for Market Journal, I'm Bill Dodd.
Thanks for that story, Bill. If you'd like more information on retirement as well as farm and ranch succession planning, you can visit cap.unl.edu, and we'll be sure to post a link to that in conjunction with this story on the Market Journal website. As we turn our attention to the grain markets, we were joined this week by Todd Hultman of DTN. As the month has progressed, the same storyline has remained. Volatility continues at the grain markets. Big questions certainly remain as Russia's war on Ukraine continues. Back here domestically, concerns of drought are impacting the trade. We began the conversation with Todd on Wednesday by looking back to the last time he was on Market Journal, which was just at the start of 2022. We're joined now by Todd Hultman. He is the lead analyst with DTN. Todd, it's always great to have you on Market Journal. Thanks for coming back to the program.
Thank you, Bryce. My pleasure.
Well, the last time we talked, it was in January. We were talking about $6 corn. The world has changed since then, that is for sure. The situation in Ukraine has obviously dominated the markets over the past couple of months now. Give us your take of where we sit with these markets at this point.
Yeah, well, needless to say, this is just crazy. We've got corn over $7 now. Back when I was talking to you, $6 looked like a very handsome price. The whole situation with Ukraine has really ramped things up, and it's added a lot of danger and potential volatility to the market, as well as real volatility. We've seen some very big price swings in grain and energy prices throughout this. Obviously, Ukraine is a very important exporter to the world of corn, wheat, barley, sunflower oil. It has a lot of major crops that the world counts on. And the threat of not having that production available to the world this year adds a lot of fear to the market. And of course, just the potential threat that this problem could get even worse adds even more fear to the market. So it's given us a very dangerous situation with prices lately.
As you look to the short term of this situation, Todd, do you think we'll just continue to see this volatile trade in all the major grain markets here until we find some sort of resolution to this conflict?
Yeah, I have to say, Bryce, as long as the Russian threat is active, it will continue to paralyze the market, and it really disrupts things in an awful way. It tends to scare the short side or potential sellers in the market, and that makes it difficult to price things accurately. We've seen a lot of commercial entities changing their cash bids, going from May contracts to July, sometimes to September, simply because they couldn't keep up with the big increases that were shown in the futures board on May. It's disrupted the entire cash grain market as well as the futures pricing board.
So, of course, we have that situation in Ukraine, which it seems like the markets are obviously closely following. But are there other factors playing into this market right now that producers should be aware of?
Well, of course, we've had serious drought in Brazil. We had a much smaller soybean crop in Brazil this year than anyone expected. That drought has also spillover effects to Argentina, where they're a major exporter of soybean meal and bean oil. So we've seen a very strong demand market this year, and demand's really picked up for U.S. products recently, but not only for corn, but also the soy products. And those higher crush values that we're seeing in soybeans is really giving strong support to our U.S. soybean price this year.
Back here domestically, it seems like the drought conversation as we're gearing up for corn and soybean planting is rearing its head. Obviously, that has to be a concern, though, when we talk about the wheat market as well. How closely are you following that drought conversation domestically?
Yeah, domestically, it is a big concern in the southwestern plains. Now, early this week, we did have a nice little storm move through here, about 2 days worth of rain and snow mix, and it looked like it really gave crops in Kansas and Oklahoma some decent benefit. But it's not a drought buster by any means, and there's still a big part of the region that really could use more moisture. So that remains a very important situation as we get closer to spring and early summer.
Todd, on a recent article posted at DTN's website, you talked about some of the challenges there are out there when trying to price new crop. Break down just a few of those challenges you see for those producers trying to figure out when's the right time to sell some new crop.
Yeah, well, I have to point out, and the reason I wrote the article, Bryce, is because this year, unlike other years, with the situation in Ukraine and the Russian threat, it's very dangerous actually to put on new crop prices early this year. And anyone that does so, you better be prepared for the possibility of really having to put up a lot of cash for margin, even to keep those hedge contracts. We simply don't know what President Putin might do. I would say that he's not acting as if he was a reasonable fellow, and he certainly threatened to ratchet up the situation in Ukraine and make things even worse. It doesn't take a lot to scare our grain and energy prices, or any market prices for that matter. And so I'm very concerned about putting on short positions even when they're hedged this year. You really have to make sure you're going to have margin available, and if you don't, you better look at some call options to limit your cash outlay.
Todd, when it comes to these markets, is there anything in particular we haven't talked about yet that producers should be mindful of?
Well, one of the positive aspects of this year, Bryce, is that the crop insurance levels are high. So if they did get in on good coverage, and hopefully they got 85% or more on their federal crop insurance protection levels, then they're going to be in pretty good shape, and they ought to be pretty well protected in what could be a very volatile and dangerous year ahead. If you don't have the crop insurance, it's going to be a very risky year indeed of what comes up ahead, and your best bet now may be to look at some put options on the board, but I will warn you, everything's quite expensive this year given the price volatility that we've seen.
A big thanks to Todd for taking the time out of his schedule to join us here on the program. Next week, we'll be joined by Doug Simon of Trade-Offs. If you have a question you'd like for me to ask him, be sure to get in touch with us on social media, and I'll be sure to pass your question along. As we mentioned earlier on the program, March 20th through the 26th was deemed Agriculture Week. Numerous agriculture groups celebrated the week by sharing stories of those involved in the ag industry. The Nebraska Farm Bureau Foundation also participated in National Ag Week, but their efforts to educate the public on agriculture are year-round. To learn more about the work of the group, we had the chance to sit down with Courtney Shreve, who serves as the Director of Outreach Education. Courtney, appreciate you coming on to Market Journal this week.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Bryce.
Well, let's talk about National Agriculture Week. Of course, there's lots of activities, and we wanted to have this conversation with you to talk about some of the ag literacy things that come with that. But big picture, bring us up to speed on what is the work that the Nebraska Farm Bureau Foundation does.
Yeah, so the Nebraska Farm Bureau Foundation exists to help people understand the vital importance of agriculture. And so we do that through a lot of programs, but through things like the Nebraska Agriculture in the Classroom program, through different scholarships and awards, and through consumer awareness as well.
So part of that is actually getting into those classrooms at an early start for the students and sharing the story of agriculture. Talk about how you do that.
Yeah, so the biggest way we get into classrooms is through our Classroom Visits program. We have 2 education specialists in the state of Nebraska, and they travel the state and reach out to teachers and offer a hands-on interactive activity. And so we have all of these grade-specific lessons, 4 per grade level for kindergarten through 5th grade, and they explore topics like the environment, like Nebraska history, technology, healthy eating, all of these different things, and teachers can pick what works best for them in their classroom, but everything aligns to the state standards, so it's teaching to science and social studies and language arts.
Can you share an example of how you use agriculture through that, perhaps some of the lessons? Is it, bringing in a soybean or a corn plant to show that, or what's that look like?
Absolutely. So when I went into the classroom to visit, what I did was I took some pictures of the farm and then products that grow on the farm. So think things like corn and soybeans and cattle and pigs. And then we built a farm web. So the farm started in the middle. They understood that the animals and plants come from farms. And then from there, we looked at things like food and fiber and fuel and how those things come from those products. So everything they use every day starts on the farm.
The Ag Pen Pal program, a lot of success with that too, right?
Yes, it's in its 31st year.
Wow.
So it's been going for quite a few years and we're excited to keep it going. Sign up will open in April. So if anyone's interested, keep an eye out for that.
So that program partners a farmer, a rancher, a producer there with the classroom. They're able to do visits throughout the year to really show the growing cycle of plants or the life cycle of animals, right? Talk about the learning outcomes from that.
Absolutely. So the goal is that you write throughout the different seasons. So you write in the fall, in the winter, in the spring, and about the different things that are happening on the farm. You know, it's easy to make a connection and be like, this is harvest and now we're planting and, you know, the calves are being born. There's so many great things that we can talk about that connect to students and those things that they're learning about. For example, they're learning about habitats, and so talking about where do our animals live. It's just a great way to put a positive face to the farming community.
You mentioned the process for producers getting involved with that is in April. What would that look like if somebody's not yet with that, but they're interested in it?
If you're interested in signing up, you can visit www.nefbfoundation.org, and Ag Pen Pal sign up will be on the front page and we'll be ready to get you signed up.
A fun program there, both for the producers and the students there. Courtney, what other programs have you excited about the work that you all are doing at the Nebraska Farm Bureau Foundation?
Yeah, we're pretty busy right now. Right now we have volunteers going into classrooms and they're participating in agriculture reading hour. So we have given them the book Barn at Night and they're taking it and they're reading it to a classroom of their choice, and then they donate that book to the school, and so agriculture gets to stay, you know, forever then through that book. And so that's a really fun program that we have going on right now with our volunteers.
When it comes to the different regions of the state, Courtney, do you all focus on any particular ones? Of course, we've got the metro areas here on the eastern side of the state, but there's classrooms all across the state. How do you prioritize your focus areas?
Definitely. I mean, we're a statewide program, so we're reaching students, you know, all across the state from Omaha to Scottsbluff. And, you know, there's a priority wherever the teachers want us, I guess, is where we go to. We're reaching out to teachers all across the state, though, with a focus in those more urban areas.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the website, but want to give it one more time, Courtney. If people are interested in supporting the work that you all are doing, what's the best way they can do so? Yeah,
if you want to learn more about us, visit our website at www.nefbfoundation.org.
Interesting stuff. Courtney, appreciate you coming on Market Journal to share some of it with us.
Thanks, Bryce.
Thanks to Courtney for joining us on the program this week. We'll be sure to post a link for more resources online at our website. It is marketjournal.unl.edu. Mike Baker of Trenton is a real grain sorghum booster. Not only has Baker been serving as a District 4 representative on the Nebraska Grain Sorghum Board, but he also has been a participant in the National Grain Sorghum Yield Contest. Over the past decade, Baker has planted sorghum on his test plots on his farm. Then he's hosted numerous field days for farmers in the area to inspect how different varieties performed in the field. You can learn more about Baker's operation and his sorghum outlook for 2022 in the March issue of the Nebraska Farmer. Well, it is now time for weather with Nebraska Extension Ag Climatologist and Market Journal Chief Meteorologist Al Dutcher. Well, Al, we've seen a significant warm-up and some precipitation across the state. How are things looking as we turn to the week ahead?
Well, Bryce, we did see those warmer temperatures early in the week, and then, of course, we had that storm system moving out into the southern part of the country. That brought some well-received moisture into portions of eastern Nebraska, particularly east central, southeast, and south central Nebraska. Precipitation totals were consistently between the 1/2 an inch and to about the inch amounts. And for the month, some of these locations in southeastern Nebraska have now received between 2 and 3 inches of moisture. Yet you go north and west of Grand Island and we've rarely been able to receive maybe a 1/4 inch the entire month. So even though these systems are missing us, we are getting moisture to the south of us, and we continue that trend. So hopefully, as we start to warm up, which has been a slow process this spring, we'll start to see some of that moisture evacuation coming up into our region, and as it moves in with frontal boundary systems moving through the region, can interact and dump moisture more to the north and northwest of where we've been seeing this moisture. So let's take a look at the upper air models and see how this storm system coming in early next week will play out. First thing I'll draw your attention to is the cold air associated with the system that comes through midweek is now over the eastern United States. So we're in a northwest flow, and the cooler temperatures have been hanging pretty consistent across eastern Nebraska. Much warmer conditions across western Nebraska. We do have a surface low situated over central portions of Wyoming. That will allow some warmth coming into the south, from the south across basically the western 2/3 of the state. And by the time we get to tomorrow, we will see that high pressure system building into our region, so we're going to return to 60s and 70s across the state, warmer temperatures across the west. Nothing in the way of moisture. Most of that's off to the northeast, and of course with the impending storm system coming in the western United States, we'll start to see moisture taken up across California up to Washington. By Monday, this storm system digs into the southwestern United States. There's going to be a deep flow of moisture starting to move toward the north, particularly as we get late in the day on Monday. Low pressure up in Montana will not have any moisture to work with. Most of this will be confined to the western 1/4 of the United States. Now, as we get into Tuesday, now we'll start to see some wraparound moisture around this low pressure system as we have surface low over Texas and in northeastern Colorado. Perfect ingredients for some upslope moisture as it wraps around. We can see the precipitation trying to build in across most of the Intermountain region. By the time we get to Wednesday, this low starts to really wind up, and it's going to have some fairly significant energy to work with. Moisture is going to be wrapped around this system, and we should see decent scattering of thunderstorms all the way from eastern Texas northward through the eastern half of Nebraska, particularly targeting northeastern Nebraska. Time we get to Thursday, this low pressure kind of slows down, kind of opens up a little bit too as it weakens. Had low pressure in northeastern portions of Oklahoma will keep this moisture wrapped around, and it actually creates a convergence zone from southwestern Nebraska all the way up into the upper peninsula of Michigan. Hopefully this will pan out and we'll get some decent moisture at the surface. By Friday, this low pressure system itself in the upper atmosphere starts to open up, start to lose some of its punch, and we'll see drier air coming in behind it. So most of the precipitation that will be associated on Friday will be in eastern Nebraska, and this might be even overplaned at some extent. As we go into the 8 to 14 day forecast, takes us from next Thursday to the following Tuesday, we have below normal conditions basically being supported by the models as we see that northwest flow. So it's going to be a slow, gradual warm-up continuing into this spring period. And in terms of precipitation, we notice a shot of above normal moisture over Colorado. That's with several waves coming down on this northwest flow. And then if we go even further out into the future, around the 6th to the 8th, another impending storm system works into our region, and we have another decent shot of a significant storm activity in the Central Plains.
Thanks, Al. Finally today, unmanned aerial vehicles, better known as drones, are being utilized by many ag producers in many aspects of production. At this year's Triumph of Ag Expo in Omaha, we caught up with owner and operator of Volitant drone technology, Kevin Knorr, to get a better understanding of some of the benefits associated with the use of drones for spraying crops. Market Journal's Mike Straub has this story.
It's about that time of year again to start thinking about spraying the fields. Using drones to help with the process might just be the new efficient way to tackle the job.
Yeah, so today we're featuring the DJI T30. You should be able to see that right over my shoulder there. It's what we call the flagship of agricultural spray drones, and basically comes with a 30-liter capacity and the ability to cover 30 to 40 acres an hour depending on your efficiencies. So we've been really happy with the results so far. Looking forward to putting it in use this season.
Drones are a great tool to use while avoiding bad field conditions, as well as preventing field damage while using heavy equipment. They are also starting to exceed expectations of fixed-wing aircrafts.
Obviously, the tractor, you're running across the field, there's compaction, and different field conditions may inhibit your ability to get in the field. Maybe it's too muddy. And then one of the other areas that we kind of compete with or maybe emphasize, our work with is the whole idea of fixed wing aircraft and helicopters and that. And so, they have their niche, which is large fields and lots of acres in a day's time. We're starting to be able to compete with the number of acres, and especially when you can start to swarm the drones. In other words, one pilot controlling more than one drone. You take that 30 or 40 acres and double and triple that, you can really accomplish a large number of acres. But the biggest probably feature that we can depend on is the ability to fly on a grid. So the drone maps out the field, or the controller maps out the field. We send it off to go do its thing. It flies on a grid. We get edge-to-edge coverage of the field. We get greater accuracy and precision with the actual spray itself.
One concern with using this technology is wind. However, drones can withstand higher winds than one might think. Generally, you won't be spraying in winds more than 8 to 12 miles per hour, regardless of the tool being used for the job.
Yeah, if they're rated at 18-mile-an-hour winds, and typically they can run in a heck of a lot more windier conditions than that. But realistically, who's going to spray at that wind? You've got drift to deal with, so you're going to be, spraying in that 8 to 12-mile-an-hour winds is typically where you'd want to be up and doing the good job with your aircraft.
The process of becoming either a commercial or private drone pilot are the same. But because any federal regulation can get complicated, the best thing to do is search for assistance when getting your drone license to help navigate through some of the different rules and regulations.
The license is essentially the same. There's just a designation as a commercial or a private operator, but the process for getting it is essentially the same, and some of the requirements are all the same as well. So I would just say, that's one of the things that we, pride ourselves on, is the ability to help those, the persons that had bought a drone from us or need some help in the area to kind of negotiate those waters. Because, any federal regulation comes with a lot of, watch part A and then go to part B, and then so they become fairly complicated really quick.
Spraying your fields may become a little more efficient this year if piloting drones is in your interest. Avoiding bad field conditions, preventing damage to the field, and more thorough applications are just some of the benefits of this new technology. Reporting for Market Journal, I'm Mike Straub.
Thanks for that story, Mike. If you'd like to learn more about these new technologies like drones and how they're assisting today's producers, you can find out how Nebraska's on-farm research is helping pave the way for producers to utilize tools like drones on operations across the state. Visit the link at the bottom of your screen now to learn more. Well, that is going to do it for this week's show. Remember, if you've missed a story, you can follow Market Journal online on our social media and on YouTube. We've also got that handy mobile app where you can catch up on all the latest. We hope to see you back here next time. Until then, I'm Bryce Duskett. Thanks for watching.
Join Market Journal online at marketjournal.unl.edu. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Promotional support is provided by the Nebraska Farmer magazine. Market Journal is produced by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources.